Since the beginning of the 21st century, international relations have encountered critical challenges and escalating crises, making it a defining, difficult period in modern history. Along with long-standing conflicts, humanity is facing new threats, not only to peace and security, but one might say even its very existence. Conflicts in various parts of the world, as well as natural disasters that often assume global proportions, are the new perils that demand our attention. These are aggravated by multiple thematic disagreements in the United Nations Security Council, all of which have consequences of a serious nature on many countries, including our own. Against this background, the United Nations General Assembly on the 28th of June 2016 elected Kazakhstan as a non-permanent member of the Security Council to represent Central Asia and the larger Asia and Pacific region. Kazakhstan is globally recognized in the world for its successful chairmanship of the Organization of Security Cooperation in Europe, the Organization of Islamic Conference, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Other initiatives in the international arena include the creation of the Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, the Congress of World Leaders and Traditional Religions, negotiations on the Iranian nuclear program, and talks for a peaceful settlement in Syria.
Kazakhstan is elected member of the Security Council.
On 1 January 2017, Kazakhstan became a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for the term 2017 to 2018. But this was preceded by a long and carefully planned election campaign.
We devoted the first year to thoroughly learn about the work of the Security Council and make a comprehensive study of the campaigns of different countries. In 2013, we developed an elaborate plan and identified synergies between the four areas of security: nuclear, water, energy and food security. Most of the plan consisted of organizational work and outreach. The communication with other countries was conducted by the Speakers of Parliament and the Speaker of the Senate, who contributed much. Several members of Parliament, who traveled far and wide, spoke on behalf of Kazakhstan. However, the main responsibility was executed by the head of our state.
The work of the mission of Kazakhstan in New York was undertaken in accordance with the 7 priorities set forth in the political address of the first President Nursultan Nazarbayev to the Security Council. This address was entitled A Conceptual Vision of Kazakhstan for Strengthening Global Partnership for Building a Safe, Fair, and Prosperous World, and was given to the status of an official document of the Security Council.
Kazakhstan has become so economically successful that Kazakhstan is making foreign aid contributions of its own to help its neighbors and to help other countries. So I think it's very admirable that Kazakhstan has becoming a larger contributor to making the world a better place. Look, no country is perfect, and we all have things we could do to improve, and the United States does as well, but I would just say that one has to recognize that Kazakhstan has made incredible progress.
Well, I think Kazakhstan plays a leadership role in Central Asia. So I see Kazakhstan as a regional leader. It has the economic potential, and it also has the education potential. Kazakhstan has tried to invest in its citizens, getting them educated in some of the best schools around the world, and also creating top-notch education systems there. So I think that the future of Kazakhstan is bright. You have some very talented people working in the country. And I think because of that, Kazakhstan has done a lot of investing in itself. I think there's also some things that it can give back to the region. I lived in Kazakhstan in the 1990s, and when I go back to Kazakhstan, I see a transformed country.
The Republic of Kazakhstan joined the UN in March 1992. The country had never before been elected as a member of the Security Council. It is the first time that Central Asia had a seat on the Security Council in the history of the United Nations. Kazakhstan's membership, therefore, as the first Central Asian country to serve on the Council, carried great significance for the region as a whole.
Kazakhstan has played a pivotal role in supporting the maintenance of international peace and security. So in my view, Kazakhstan is a very important player in the Security Council, and Kazakhstan also worked very closely with all the members of the Council.
Kazakh diplomats tried to mobilize the potential of the Security Council to draw the attention of the world community to issues of all countries in the region. Their particular focus, however, was on supporting Afghanistan so as to help it return to a secure and peaceful life. In the course of our work in the Security Council, and particularly during our presidency of the Council in January 2018, an important debate was held on building a regional partnership in Afghanistan and Central Asia as a model of interdependence of security and development. The session was co-organized together with the participation of the heads of Central Asian ministries of foreign and economic affairs and key aid agencies.
Afghanistan, culturally, linguistically, historically, is a Central Asian country. We often don't think of Afghanistan as being Central Asian, but it is Central Asian. And the Central Asian republics can have strong influence in the country and can help guide it along the right path. And Kazakhstan is doing a really good job of this, recently hosting the Women's Summit, providing scholarships for Afghan students, and also using your time as on the UN Security Council to really highlight Afghanistan.
It was for the first time in the last 7 years that a Security Council mission was arranged by Kazakhstan to visit Afghanistan. This allowed Council members to familiarize themselves with the situation on the ground and hold a series of meetings in Kabul with the country's leadership, representatives of the economic sector, and non-governmental organizations.
We know that Afghanistan is a Muslim country, and we follow the situation there very closely. Afghanistan faces many challenges. But the council member, when we visited Afghanistan there and we met with the president, with the prime minister, with other ministers, we actually had a first-hand information about the situation. Kazakhstan actually took the lead on the visit. That was one of the achievements of your country and the Security Council.
Kazakhstan proposed to consider Afghanistan as a profitable economic partner for the entire Central Asian region and to provide this country with comprehensive assistance, including in infrastructure and transport development, as well as the issues of water, energy, and food security. These measures are necessary to create a stable and secure environment in our part of the world.
We supported the candidacy of Kazakhstan to the Security Council, and we were very pleased to see Kazakhstan as a country of our region. Generally speaking, Kazakhstan has done well, has performed well in the Council. Kazakhstan facilitated the visit of the Security Council to Afghanistan, and also Kazakhstan facilitated the hosting or the organization of a high-level meeting of the Security Council at ministerial level, with a focus on the development and security of Afghanistan and Central Asia. And for the first time that the Security Council had an approach towards Afghanistan through a development angle. And there's a lot we're doing with the Central Asian republics when it comes to mega regional economic development projects. There's the TAPI project, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India gas pipeline, which is happening. We operationalized the Lapis Lazuli trade and transit corridor, which involves Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, all the way to Europe. That will give access to our exports to the markets of Europe. There is the CASA 1000 project, which involves the import of 1,300 megawatts of electricity from Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan to Afghanistan and to Pakistan. We see Kazakhstan as a true representative of our region in the Security Council. We never felt that we were left behind, and we see Kazakhstan as an important regional player in our part of the world.
Central Asia has become more recognizable and better understood by the Security Council, a fact acknowledged by the Council members themselves, thanks to the committed engagement of Kazakhstan during its 2-year term on this apex body of the UN.
A sub-regional and regional approach is becoming an important factor in ensuring peace and security, because it is impossible to achieve peace and security in one country if there are problems along the borders. You will never feel safe.
Almost 75% of today's agenda of the Security Council is devoted to conflicts in Africa, which are especially protracted in countries such as the Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Burundi, Sudan and South Sudan, Mali, Libya, Somalia, and some others. Members of the Security Council recognize that Kazakhstan, as chairman of the Committee on Somalia and Eritrea, was able to significantly activate its work.
Kazakhstan had a key role to play in one of the happiest moments in the Security Council for me. To use the right of veto is not the most joyful action. Unfortunately, it is sometimes inevitable. But the sanctions I recently lifted for the first time in the long-term practice of the Security Council gave much satisfaction. Unfortunately, it is much easier to impose Security Council sanctions on a country than to lift them. Recently, thanks to the improved relations between Ethiopia, Eritrea and Djibouti, and also due to the determined efforts of Kazakhstan and its ambassador Kairat Umarov, who is also the chair of the Sanctions Committee on Somalia and Eritrea, we were able to lift sanctions from Eritrea.
The years of Eritrea's international isolation ended with the first contacts of officials of this country with the chairman of the Sanctions Committee.
Lifting of the sanctions is a rare occurrence. It doesn't happen very often. But the fact that it happened during the chairmanship of Kazakhstan, we'll always remember. The Security Council will always say sanctions not to impact the population, but it impacted us in many countries. Once they see the sanctions, they don't even try to analyze whether it is arms embargo or it is also economic embargo. We wanted to import vaccine, for children. We were not able to use through regular means, so we had to hire a chartered flight. Also, when somebody sees a country under sanctions, it's not easy for them to do business with us. It's a very big impetus for the region to focus more on the development instead of focus on conflict.
So how do you think the economical, political sanctions are the effective instrument?
Application of sanctions should be based on evidence, very strong evidence. You cannot simply impose sanctions for political reasons.
For the first time in many years, the mission of Kazakhstan organized visits by the committee chair to Somalia, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya.
This was precisely the time when the leadership of Ethiopia has changed and a new prime minister was appointed. And during the conversation with us, he said, "I want to extend a hand of friendship. I want to achieve reconciliation in this region."
Thus, the Ethiopian leadership's open political, genuine stance and energetic measures, accompanied by the lifting of sanctions from Eritrea, contributed to start the process of reapproachment between all other countries of Africa. This turned out to be just as important for the continent as a whole, where efforts are being made to implement peace agreements and move towards conflict resolution. During the 70th anniversary of the General Assembly of the United Nations, the first president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, proposed to the international community to declare 2045, the centenary of the UN, as the guaranteed date for achieving peace in a world free from violent conflict.
Humanity must move from routine warnings and overcoming the consequences of wars and conflicts to a new development strategy that would make all tensions meaningless. To do this, we need to look boldly beyond the horizon of time and see the world when the United Nations is 100 years old. I am convinced that in the next 30 years, our worldly civilization will find in itself the wisdom and political will to cut the Gordian knot of wars and conflicts. In the 21st century, the central task of humankind should be to implement a strategy that will forever save the world from the threat of wars as such, and also eliminate their causes. To this end, I propose that before reaching the centenary of the United Nations, we develop what can be called a Global Strategic Initiative Plan 2045.
The landmark outcome of Kazakhstan's work in the direction of peace and security was the concrete step it took to become a troop contributing country.
Kazakhstan has the potential to help us in many different areas of peacekeeping to improve our effectiveness, more mobility, more situational awareness, better protection. There is another area which is also very important to us, and that's increasing the number of women in peacekeeping.
And I think they are doing very well. I must also point out that Kazakhstan has been one of the very early adopters of the Action for Peacekeeping Declaration, and Kazakhstan is also one of the rare countries which has had no cases of conduct and discipline violations. And of course, I am happy that Kazakhstan is also a signatory to the Voluntary Compact on prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse. So on the whole, I believe that Kazakhstan is a very important, very critical partner. Next year, Kazakhstan will become the first developing country to host the Partnership Symposium on how to better use newer technologies for the benefit of peacekeeping.
Why for Kazakhstan is so important to be a part of the UN peacekeeping work?
Firstly, each UN member state should be committed to peacekeeping activities. In accordance with our strategic documents approved by the President, one of the tasks of the armed forces is to be engaged in international efforts. Besides, it is also very critical for the armed forces to gain practical experience.
120 Kazakh peacekeepers started daily service in the Indian Battalion of the United Nations Interim Forces in Lebanon, known as UNIFIL.
I welcome the Kazakh contingent as part of 11 Jat Infantry Battalion Group. I am very happy with the standard of training of Kazakhstan contingent and the leadership. We already had conducted a joint training prior to the induction, which really helped us to understand each other and the nuances of the peacekeeping operations in UNIFIL. Now we are a well-knitted team, and they are part of my contingent, of course, and I assure all our assistance to them.
During the preparatory phase, we visited the Republic of India and studied each other. They studied our cultural norms, we studied specifics of their mentality. Today, all our team watched our flag-raising ceremony with pride.
What are the future prospects of UN peacekeeping forces on the border of Lebanon and Israel?
We are really proud to have a Kazakhstan company here with us in the Sector East working with the Indian Battle Group. So from 2006 until now, we have, as you say, 12 years of stability. So in the future, I hope my end state is to withdraw to the Lebanese armed forces the control and the security of the south of Lebanon. So that means that the two countries here, in the north and the south part of the Blue Line, will be able to sign a permanent ceasefire agreement.
We asked the people we met on the streets of Beirut to share their thoughts on the situation in the Middle East, particularly about their daily life in the region.
Why he fight in this country and destroy this country, I don't understand. Syria is the same and Iraq is the same. We must to live in peace. I don't care if Christian or Muslim, Shia or Sunni. My mom is Shia, my father is Sunni, my grandma is Christian, and we have one God.
What is your hope for your country?
I hope live in peace. All the people around us, Syrian and Iraq, I pray to stop the war and live in peace and let the people live. Nobody live happy from this war. The children dies, everything destroyed.
I born in Haifa, then we moved to Beirut in 1948. There are no end for wars, different wars.
How do you think? Is it possible to come to peace?
It may take a long time more. There are millions of Palestinians abroad, no solution for them. I think they should start a solution with the Palestinian, the main problem, with Israel, then others will be easier. And it gives some peace for the Palestinians, gives some rights for them. They've been in the Palestine all the time.
Another example of Kazakhstan's peacekeeping activities is the provision of a negotiating platform in Astana for resolving the Syrian crisis.
The leadership of Kazakhstan has been shown in different areas in the Security Council, not just because of its independent and strong voice supporting the values of the United Nations, but also in specific areas of peace and security. I recall clearly the efforts of Kazakhstan in terms of the Astana process in order to bring some relief to the Syrian war.
However, there is a different opinion as well.
For sure, the Astana process is an example of Kazakhstan trying to show leadership on the world stage. Kazakhstan, I think, over the years has tried to create this position in the world where it can be seen as a place where big problems can be solved, whether it's what's happening in Afghanistan or with Syria or with nuclear weapons. So we should not confuse the great work that Kazakhstan has done trying to get the parties together with what I see as a failure of the Astana process in Syria. It doesn't mean that Kazakhstan has failed. Kazakhstan has done everything it can to bring the parties together and find a solution, but there's a saying in English that you can bring a horse to water, that you can't make it drink.
According to other observers, the Astana talks are unique because it was for the first time in many years of the military crisis that the two conflicting parties were able to sit at the same negotiating table instead of looking at each other through the muzzle of a machine gun. As a result, a milestone agreement was reached on de-escalating the zones of military conflict.
Without the Kazakh hospitality, we wouldn't have been here for quite some time, achieving some progress in the implementation of Astana agreements, which established what we call the de-escalation zones. And to be honest with you, we are proud that we have achieved in Astana, in a rather short period of time, which is not even 2 years, which led to the decreasing of casualties among Syrian people. This is why we are extremely appreciative of the initiative of His Excellency the President Nursultan Nazarbayev for hosting these talks.
As a result of the Astana process, the Syrian opposition was divided into two categories, the moderates and radicals. An agreement was also reached with the opposition's field commanders to stand up as a united front against the ISIS and Al-Qaeda forces in Syria.
So it happened that Astana was chosen as a place for holding Syrian talks. We are happy about this for several reasons. Firstly, because it is, after all, country mostly Muslim population. Secondly, it takes a neutral stance towards all regimes of the world. We thank President Nursultan Nazarbayev, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and all the people of Kazakhstan for providing the conditions and for helping us to facilitate the negotiation process.
The delegations of the Syrian government and the armed opposition, together with the observers from the UN, the USA, the European Union, and Jordan, participated in the negotiations. Russia, Turkey, and Iran were the guarantors during the Astana talks.
Certainly, it's very important to have the Astana process and to have, of course, Russia and Turkey and particularly Iran. And because of the U.S. relationship with Iran and some other countries' relations with Iran, it's hard for others to participate in a format where Iran plays a leading role. So I think that will not be possible to resolve the conflict without some kind of role for Iran in the negotiating process. Right now, the only real opportunity for that is through the Astana process. So if someone else comes up with another format that includes Iran, it would be worth looking at that. I think that to have the Astana process as one component of a broader portfolio of diplomatic efforts to address the war, I think it's important.
In addition, an agreement was reached on the exchange of prisoners during the negotiations in Astana, and working groups were set up to move towards this objective. It was also decided to guarantee the delivery of humanitarian aid to zones controlled by the rebels.
I would applaud Kazakhstan for is taking the initiative to try to help the opposing parties to come together for the people of Syria, because in the end, what is most important is that the people who live in Syria make a decision about how they want their country to be in the future.
Astana was able to create a successful platform for peace negotiations far away from the traditional European powers, while not contradicting them. At the same time, there was an adherence to the general principles of neutrality, diplomacy, and providing comfortable conditions.
The horrendous conflict in Syria has been on the agenda of the Council's work throughout the conflict in Syria. We all know the constructive role that Kazakhstan has played, including hosting of the Astana talks the last 2 years that have complemented the Geneva process that the UN has led under its special envoy.
Мы неоднократно с самого начала Астанинского процесса подчеркивали, что Астанинский процесс имеет...
From the very beginning, we have repeatedly emphasized that the Astana process addresses issues related to ending hostilities, creating de-escalation zones, and implementing confidence-building measures. The political process should take place under the generally recognized Geneva platform, which is under the auspices of the United Nations. This has always been the principal position of Kazakhstan.
Это принципиальная позиция Казахстана.
We asked the people of Syria about how they lived during the war and what is the difference they see in their way of life today.
During the crisis, the life was so miserable here because there was no electricity, no water, a lot of meetings, everything, all of the services, the infrastructure has been damaged due to the opposition. Then after the crisis, the situation is better from 2 years from now up till today. After the liberation of the eastern part of Aleppo, the situation is getting better, inshallah. Now we have electricity, we have water back again, a lot of many things. The life has been back again. After 4 o'clock, during the crisis, we were not able to be out of the house. Many times we work from home, a lot of many things. Nowadays, every day you can find sometimes the people during the security that the people are around till sometimes 2 in the morning. They will be around the castle, everything, even the situation, and getting better and better. Rehabilitation start. Hope that it will be for the better, and I encourage all of the people around, especially Syrian refugees, to be back to Syria.
I am a soldier of the Syrian Arabian army. Here we are fighting against Daesh, Jabhat al-Nusra and other terrorists who want to destroy my country and change its essence and soul. It is our duty as citizens of Syria to protect our values. We still hope that the negotiations in Geneva and Astana will bring positive results and lead to peace. We need peace, but the negotiations must be between the 2 Syrian parties, without any foreign influence and interference.
Russia, Iran and Turkey, they have been able to broker a number of important de-escalation agreements to limit the dramatic impact of the war. They are discussing exchange of prisoners and other aspects, and hopefully supporting a true political process that needs to be conducted in Geneva under UN auspices, and that we hope will be able to move forward. So the UN has participated since the beginning in Astana, and we strongly congratulate the government of Kazakhstan for its initiative to offer Astana as a platform for peace in the world.
Negotiating for a peaceful settlement of the Syrian conflict, participation in peacekeeping operations as part of UNIFIL, UN certification of the Kazakhstani National Peacekeeping Training Center, KazCent, are few of the many highlights of Kazakhstan's achievements. These are indeed invaluable experiences for Kazakhstan's diplomats and the military. Terrorism has no geography as suicide bomb attacks can occur in any part of the world. Terror has no voice. It only speaks the language of fear. Terrorists have no face. They cover them with masks. Terrorism does not even have a definition. Terror chooses civilians as its victims.
It happened in 2012. I left the house for a walk, but suddenly there was a crash. And the car on the street that I was passing by exploded. I woke up in the hospital. My face was disfigured. I had a surgery and the doctors reconstructed my face from the pieces that remained. I am still suffering from the headaches.
People should be educated, have the right to decent work, be involved in social, cultural, and political discussions, and be able to communicate their opinions to each other.
There are people in many countries, including the United States, that have been radicalized. I think one of the things that we should recognize is that Kazakhstan does not have a lot of radicalization. I think that's something that we can learn from. And I think it's a combination of economic development, it's a question of political participation, it's a question of all people in a society feeling included and not feeling marginalized or rejected. And I also think sometimes it's also a combination of intelligence and police work. But intelligence and police work and military are not enough.
Kazakhstan's mission to the UN was fully immersed in the counterterrorism track as chair of the 3 Sanctions Committee of the Security Council on Somalia and Eritrea, ISIL, Daesh and Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban.
To us, members of Daesh, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, they're all the same. We know them as terrorists. They violate the basic rights of the people of Afghanistan and they are threats to the region. We want members of the region and other countries of the region to see them with the same eyes. Not to say that, oh, we use the Taliban to fight Daesh and we use Daesh to fight another group. Because this is how terrorist groups could take advantage of this kind of policy.
Within the framework of the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly, the Code of Conduct for a World Free from Terrorism, which was initiated by the first president Nursultan Nazarbayev, was adopted in September 2018. Soon after it was launched, nearly 80 countries signed up to form a coalition to combat terrorism.
We try to give people the opportunity to understand what fighting terrorism is about. It is to end all financing terrorism and not encouraging foreign fighters to move freely around the world. At the same time, we realize that we cannot force governments to change. Hence, this is also the basis and cause of the problem of terrorism.
Terrorism is not a natural disaster. It is perpetuated by people and can be defeated only by the joint efforts of the people of all countries.
Kazakhstan was extremely helpful in New York within the Security Council. A lot of foreign terrorists who are operating in my country came from your area, from Turkestan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Chechnya, Caucasus. So it is in the interest of Kazakhstan to know what these foreign terrorists are doing in our area. This phenomenon of foreign terrorists operating in Syria and Iraq has become an international one, has become a global concern to many countries. I had the honor to sign on behalf of my government this code of conduct, and we are fully satisfied with this initiative, and we are full member now in the international community, committing ourselves to the content of this code of conduct, because it commits all member states who signed the code of conduct to fight terrorism genuinely, not politically.
Development is an important element of peace and security in recent times. Without strengthening the security development nexus, we cannot achieve stability in any country. This was the strategy emphasized by Kazakhstan during its membership in the Security Council for resolving and preventing conflicts, as well as preventing their root causes.
I have to compliment Kazakhstan for its
efforts to promote the nexus between security and development. I know this has been a major theme for them over the last 2 years, not just in the Security Council, but throughout all UN activities. They have, I think, raised a very important issue about the need for development in order to maintain security, not just in Central Asia or in the Asian region, but everywhere in the world. This strategy is quite applicable in different parts of the planet and has every reason to become a model approach. Its key element is the creation of a bundle of security and development in each region, as well as coordinated UN activities, both at the headquarters and in the field. Today, there are 14 UN programs and agencies with multi-country and sub-regional mandates located in the southern capital of Kazakhstan. Thus, Almaty is currently an inter-regional center of UN agencies. It is also a regional peacekeeping hub that is fast developing here, the demand for which will only increase in the coming years. In addition, a modern building has been allocated for international organizations. The UN hub in Almaty will work in unison with efforts to reform the UN, and in particular, its development systems, both at the national, regional, and inter-regional levels. The hub will solve common development problems for the region. The center will coordinate measures in the areas of sustainable development, humanitarian aid, resilience building, and natural disaster risk reduction. Our world is changing rapidly. New scientific and communication technologies, artificial intelligence, and high-speed transportation are emerging. At the same time, the world is threatened by global challenges. The financial markets are unstable, and the global economy is developing slowly. The world has ceased to be unipolar, but has not yet become multipolar. Against this background, we observe violations of international law, aggression, rapidly changing demographic fluctuations, global warming, and other environmental problems. Uncertainty and chaos engender distrust of institutions. In addition, their structures and systems do not correspond to the rapidly developing technological innovations. Does the UN system meet the threats and challenges of the 21st century?
The solution, and it might be having sort of the broad overview at the UN, but the solutions might be in smaller organizations to come around. For now, the UN is very good for talking about general global issues and for trying to solve and deflect some of the world's biggest challenges and prevent them from becoming worse. I think on solving some of these issues, it might be better to have sort of smaller, more informal settings to do that.
We as India are ready to subject ourselves to any democratic assessment to decide whether we meet any credible norms. There are other countries in the world who are interested in similar goals. For example, Japan or Brazil or Germany, also for example, Africa. Africa with 54 members has no representation in the permanent category. So, I mean, this is a historical grievance for them. Certainly, if the UN is organization which represents we the people, then it must be more democratic and it cannot ignore the desires and the aspirations of 1/6 of humanity. So our goal is that we would like, in a very technical manner, to go about changing the structure of the UN because it has many good qualities. But if it does not adjust to changing needs, changing requirements, then people or countries will find other ways of resolving solutions, and it's not good for any of us.
For our diplomats, the work in the United Nations Security Council will be remembered by total immersion in the processes of developing decisions that directly affect not only global stability and security, but also the lives of large numbers of certain people. Frustration and disappointment when obvious solutions are sacrificed for political interests are vividly remembered too. These results in growing misunderstanding and mistrust. Though they happen infrequently, they are more stark and deep in their impact.
First of all, what we see today is the tension in the Security Council. Unfortunately, the members of the Security Council cannot find a common language on many issues. There are many different points of view. Nevertheless, changes are being implemented, but they can be described as small. What we need is a deeper reform. Of course, the organization needs to improve and increase its efficiency. The reform of the UN Secretariat, its methods of work, methods of functioning, all this should lead to an increase in the efficiency of the organization's work and not to regular bureaucratic rearrangements. But honestly, I see no need for radical reforms. What is the purpose for decisive reforms of the organization? Is it to change the world order that emerged with its creation in 1945? Probably not.
Kazakhstan has developed its position on the UN reforms.
The reform of the UN Security Council, the activities of the UN, of course, it is overdue. Let me recall the 70th anniversary session of the UN General Assembly in 2015. It was then that our president called for the Economic and Social Council to be transformed into a Global Development Council, which, perhaps in the future, would take over the functions of an economic regulator. This idea may be difficult to implement today, but it is a very far-reaching initiative of great positive impact, which can lead to success in the end. This proposal can result in the formation of a completely new world economic order that is more just and fair. This new order should ensure that the aspirations of ordinary people are reflected in the activities of the United Nations.
For 40 years, 456 nuclear tests were carried out on the Kazakh soil. Radiation contaminated a vast territory, and 500,000 people suffered. The consequences of nuclear experiments still drastically impact the lives of the local people with diseases and genetic mutations. The anti-nuclear movement, Nevada Semi, headed by famous poet Olza Solaymanov, demonstrated to the entire world that common people can stop nuclear insanity. On the 29th of August, 1991, for the first time in world history, a nuclear test site was closed. The closure of the Semipalatinsk nuclear test site by a presidential decree of Nursultan Nazarbayev was momentous. Following the will of the people, Kazakhstan voluntarily renounced the fourth largest nuclear arsenal of the world.
We voluntarily eliminated the nuclear potential of weapons in the country, which together exceeded the nuclear power of Britain, France, and China combined. Some 400 warheads were located on our territory, and the head of our state made a historic decision to rid the country of these deadly weapons, thereby setting an example for other countries.
Norm against nuclear testing is something that Kazakhstan definitely has been demonstrating a strong leadership at the global level. Your president's decision to close the Semipalatinsk testing site was such a big political and also practical achievement. And the establishment of International Day Against Nuclear Testing, the 29th of August, every year we celebrate that, we commemorate that day. You have also been instrumental in creating this Central Asian nuclear weapon-free zone. It is a very concrete, very important contribution to all of us getting closer to a world free of nuclear weapons.
Kazakhstan believes that it has the moral right to take initiatives to completely rid the world of deadly weapons. However, it is not so easy.
Kazakhstan acted with dignity in the Security Council. This was particularly vivid in January 2018, when the central event of the Kazakhstan's chairmanship was the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, which was chaired by President Nursultan Abishevich Nazarbayev. Our Kazakh partners highlighted an extremely critical and relevant issue on the security agenda. It was increasing confidence-building measures in the field of non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. This is the goal of the entire global community. Unfortunately, the conditions for this goal have not yet matured. Strategic stability is a broader concept than just possessing nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, the conditions for this have not yet matured. Strategic stability is a broader concept than just possessing a nuclear weapon. And unfortunately, the destruction of nuclear weapons at one time does not solve the problem of strategic stability today. But as a long-term goal, we share it and will strive for it.
Kazakhstan's presidency of the Security Council emphasized the need for nuclear disarmament for the sake of global peace and security for the whole world. This idea is supported by other countries in the region.
For us, we're surrounded by nuclear powers. We have got Pakistan, which is a nuclear power now, and India is not that far away, and then of course, we have got a number of other countries in our region with nuclear weapons. We have been calling for denuclearization of our region, and we welcome that. And we hope we reach a time that there is no need for nuclear bombs in our region.
India, which has always been for nuclear disarmament, continues to promote that as a goal. However, we would like this to be totally non-discriminatory and on the basis of sovereign equality.
Despite the obvious disagreements between some members of the Nuclear Five, they all supported the text of the statement by the first president of the Security Council, in which non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction was recognized as a measure of confidence to prevent conflicts in the global arena.
The issue of non-proliferation is very complex. The 5 leading states are united and believe that now is not the time to talk about disarmament and non-proliferation. However, our president said that he will speak on this topic. As proven, he turned out to be right, because the essence of what he said was perceived very positively. Today's realities are such that many conflicts can be prevented and effectively resolved only with mutual understanding and trust between the world's nuclear powers. They bear the highest responsibility on behalf of humanity for preventing a nuclear catastrophe. It is the major nuclear powers that should be at the vanguard of the struggle for a nuclear-free world, and to set an example for the reduction of weapons of mass destruction. But this does not mean that other countries should stand aside, as though little depends on them. On the other hand, if the great nuclear powers say that we will retain nuclear weapons and modernize them, but these weapons are forbidden to all others, I think that we will not see any results. Therefore, I urge all to work together towards this noble objective. The world community is strengthened by its diversity and pluralism and can survive and flourish when there is a balance and harmony between nations and peoples inhabiting our planet. This is why we must work together to achieve a safer, more equitable and fairer world order based on the supremacy and rule of international law. Nuclear weapons of mass destruction are a global threat to human existence. In the event of a suicidal war, neither the countries possessing nuclear arsenal nor the states that do not have these weapons will survive.
I have to say that Kazakhstan has been an extremely useful member of the Security Council because we have a tradition of being a bridge builder, a messenger for peace. Your president has had consistently a very solid policy for dialogue among different religions, for dialogue among different communities, for tolerance to be established in the relations among peoples. And so this spirit has been permeating the activities of Kazakhstan in the Security Council. So in many difficult questions where members tend to be radically against each other, Kazakhstan is always a very important, honest broker. And that helps us a lot, because it helps create an environment where decisions can be taken, where differences can be overcome, and where common sense and the spirit of consensus can emerge.
Kazakhstan's mission has completed its work as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council by successfully fulfilling the tasks assigned to it. However, our country will continue its peacekeeping and peace-building initiatives for global security, which is a key priority of its foreign policy.
I know you have been in Kazakhstan. So how did you find my country?
Oh my God, it's so beautiful and so peaceful. Your president, Nazarbayev, when he was speaking, and I said, oh, this is a spiritual man. He's a contented man. And he's talking, well, we got to go beyond the religions. And we have to go to that place we are all one. We don't have any differences. And he was able to do that, and I felt very comfortable, me being a spiritual person, a Hindu monk. We have to lift ourselves to that enlightened leadership. We cannot stay in the lower level of mental and physical plane, because that's a level of competition. That's how the animals behave, competition. And in that level, the humanity is not there. But we have to lift ourselves to the social level where we look at each other and we care for each other. And we see each other as partners for peace in the world. But after that level, you go to enlightened leadership.
Kazakhstan calls on all countries to listen to the voice of reason and unite efforts to eliminate the root causes of conflicts and wars. We have to decide how we want to see the future of our children. Like this, or like this. And what planet will we leave to them? This one? Or this one?